Outer Orange. Hello and welcome to... So, as you guys know, I have talked about this card in particular quite a few times. I recently did a top 8 video where I pretty much had these at max copies. I pretty much claimed it to be the best card in my deck, all this kind of stuff, explaining why. You know, that was a top 8 deck profile video, and I thought that this card is of such high importance in terms of your deck building and, you know, the structure of your deck and how you may want to build even for the upcoming meta, that then maybe it is time for me to talk about this card as its own video. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to give you guys pretty much just a bunch of things and interactions and level of plays that you can do with this card to kind of help you see why you may want to consider running a card like this in Grand Blue or any other deck. The deck I primarily use this in is Grand Blue. However, the fact that this is a straight Kea card, you can also run this card in Aqua Force and in Mega Colony. I do not know if those two clans have access to recycle soul as easily as Grand Blue does. If they do, there might not be a terrible idea to potentially think about running cards like this in there as well, but that's not my level of expertise. I'm mainly discussing this for premium, for Grand Blue premium specifically, as this card is absolutely nuts, and I feel like a lot of people just either don't know about it, haven't tried it, or just stick to Navigator, not knowing that this card also works like Navigator, in some ways even better than Navigator himself. You'll notice I have a bunch of cards up here. I'm going to be just kind of referring back to some of these cards, all that kind of stuff, but before anything else, we should probably discuss what the actual card is and what it does. So let's start with the skill. Rearguard skill says Soul Blast 1, retire this unit like a top 3 cards from top of your deck. Shoot up to 1 unit card from among them, call it to rear guard, discard the rest. That unit called cannot move to other rear guard circles to end a turn. Now that skill on its own kind of sounds a little meh, like it's like, oh, you have to Soul Blast, you have to retire, you do all this stuff, but the most important part about this is pretty much the combination that it involves in decks like Grand Blue. So Grand Blue is a drop zone deck, and this card literally says, look at top 3, call 1, discard 2. So essentially you're milling 2 cards, and you are Soul Blasting, and you're retiring himself. So you're essentially milling 4 cards on top of getting a call out of this. Now, why is that important? Let's start with kind of the basics. Let's talk about just basic milling. This card mills you 4 cards essentially, while also getting you a unit to the board. That is insanely good because you can even do this with Navigator, and that's just amazing. And you can do this several times. So say in your top 3, if you see another Bilber, you can call the Bilber out and do this again. Now, another thing that this is important, you can actually recycle this card with this crit right here. So early on, since this is a 0 and this is a 1, you can do this on turn 1, by the way. So if you have a bunch of these in your hand, you can put them into soul, draw. Oh, you saw a couple Bilbers, call Bilber out, Soul Blast this card out. Do your top 3, you can grab a crit and then call the crit and put the crit to soul and draw again. So that's one of the interactions that you can do, is this right here. It recursions for a while, so you can actually go through almost your entire deck. There's been games where I pretty much decked out because of just the excessive amount of milling. Like, there are some games where I was testing to see just how far I could take it, and I legitimately had 30 I had 25 to 30 and drop just off of just using a couple of these, because that's just how fast it works. Back when I used to run Navigator is also a big plussing engine, as you can just keep calling, and then you can rest. You can say one of the calls is Navigator, you can actually rest Navigator, rest this card, and then you instantly get 5 mil, and then you retire this card, Soul Blast, and then you go on a milling spree again. So essentially you can mill up to 9 to 10 cards off of just Navigator and Bilber as well. So that's one interaction you could do, but I promise you there's plenty more. So another interesting interaction with this is that this goes around bugs. So a skill states that you retire it and then you call something else out in its place. So now you have a unit here stood, and you have a unit stood in the back row, so you can actually just leave it there. So some cool stuff you can call is you call a dragon in the back row. You could do it again on this side. So say you Bilber on this side, say the top 3, you get another dragon. You can call another dragon over on this side. It's really high roll, but if you say you early Bilber and you set up your drop, you can actually get 2 dragons out extremely early, and then next turn you can push them up and they can actually start swinging. And because of the fact that you build so much, chances are these will actually be insanely lethal and insanely high. So that's actually one of the plays that you can do with Bilber, is just calling dragons. Doesn't necessarily have to be 2, you can actually just call 1 and just be fine. But as I mentioned, the Bugs play is really good because these rear guards are stood, and what happens is that the person that's facing you, that's facing Bugs, they won't be able to they won't be able to do as much. They can still kind of rest and stuff like that, but they'll get a lot less draw, and they'll actually lose the grade 2 game against you, which means you'll be striding first, which is exactly what you want. And as your drop zone keeps going and growing, you can actually kill your opponent the minute you first stride against Bugs. So that is one of the approaches you can do. If you do high roll to the Skull Dragons, you can actually just move them up, out grade 2 game them, go into whatever your stride is, get the dragons back, and you'll probably kill them unless they literally have like the nut combo in their hand and they can get around it somehow. The chances are they'll die, because the dragons do swing over heal guardians, and by the way, if they're using heal guardians, that means they're losing out on G guardians early, and that's just how it is. So another thing you can do, as I mentioned, as we've been discussing, you pretty much call a card to the board, right? Well, that means it activates on place abilities. So cards like this do go off. You can actually, if you're giving counterblast, you can go to Column Bard, get another mill out of that, or you can go to Great Shade, get 2 more mills out of this one, on top of that getting important pieces back to your hand. Oh no, I don't have a right target. Well, boom, now you do. Oh no, I need this thing. Oh well, now you just got it back. Oh, I need a heal guardian. Cool, I can get a heal guardian back. I need some pieces for like later turns, like Bicken, or maybe I want to guard with Chappie the Ghosty, and I saw that and I want to just use that to move even further, or say I need this in my drop. Now, something else to keep in mind about this whole combination is that because you're seeing more of your deck faster, it makes Great Shade even more of an important card, because you can set up on starting on turn 1, on turn 2, you can already start setting up with Great Shade. Your Great Shade, you know, early, like you say you call Great Shade early and you have like 2 cards in drop, you're not really going to be grabbing anything significant. But if you Bilber and then you get Great Shade out, oh my goodness, now you have all these targets in your drop zone potentially that you can grab, right? Like whatever you need is you have access to it, and that is insanely important. Another thing, some people will rush mill decks that prefer OT out of deck. So what you can do is you can actually get OT out of deck and then use Quincy the Ghosty to then send OT back to deck, so that way you can utilize that kind of play when you're down to about 5 cards in deck. So that's just another interesting thing you can do with Grand Blue. But yeah, like I mentioned, any on-place abilities do activate. You can actually even go even further and get a Beatrice on the board, and then use Beatrice skill to Soul Blast and call a dragon out. And if you do that, by the way, the dragon will be able to attack. The Beatrice won't be able to, but the dragon will actually be able to attack. So you can use Beatrice's skill to Soul Blast, call a dragon to the front row, and you can instantly start swinging with it. And as I mentioned, your drop zone will be relatively huge, so you actually be able to just go lethal. Now again, as I mentioned, the setup is super important. One of the reasons why I really like Bilber is it helps me unbrick. There are so many times where I played Grand Blue in the past where I'm like I'm missing like 1 or 2 pieces, or are missing, or I didn't see a heal guardian in time, or you know, it's always something, right? But Bilber fixes that problem, because you're going through so much of your deck that you'll probably see at least 1 heal guardian, or at least 1 ride target, or at least a stride crit, or Cunnel, or Bicken, or maybe your counter chargers, or Night Rose, or Night Storm, whatever you need, Skull Dragons, whatever you need to set up for the Bilber engine will find it for you, and then you can utilize that to then try and kill your opponent. You can find these and then draw through your deck a little bit faster. Sometimes it'll even plus you. I haven't talked about Ghost Ship. Ghost Ship is another thing that you can call. Use Beatrice to call the Ghost Ship, and then now you have an attacker, and you have a draw that's coming at your opponent's face, on top of the fact that it's being 24, and then it gets even higher in later games. And then you might be asking yourself, well, why 4? Well, you want to see this card earlier than later. You don't want to be milling late game, you want to mill early game, so you want to see this as soon as possible, and the point of it is to set up your drop as soon as possible. A lot of people will say Grand Blue is a relatively slow deck. It's a kill potential, and everything it does is all about controlling your opponent to the point where they can't do anything. You survive their stuff, and then you kill them on your first, or probably most likely your second stride. Well, Bilber speeds up that process times 2. You can easily get access to whatever you need. Your opponent's like, oh no, I saw Skeleton Cannoneer, I'm screwed, right? Because I Bilbered him out early on, and now he's just there in my drop zone all game until I use him. Against decks like Narukami, I cannot discuss for the new stuff that's coming to Narukami. I haven't tested it. Prior to the new Premium Collection coming out, you can actually just rush your opponent down with Bilber. Like, you don't really care about them binding your stuff. You can just rush down, make your drop zone be like 20 cards, and then it doesn't really matter what they bind, because you're just going to kill them anyway. It's one of the best strategies I've figured out against Narukami. Of course, you can go other approaches. You can just call nothing and then just go for try going for a vanilla approach. I go for the more aggressive approach, where I just beat my opponent down until they can't do anything. Another thing that's great about Bilber is that you cannot deny it. If I draw into Bilber, it doesn't matter what you're doing on your side. You're not denying Bilber. You are not denying this card. Doesn't matter. It's a Soul Blast. I literally could draw into a Doubt the Ghosty, Bilber, a crit, like a Grey 2, and like, I don't know, like some other card, right? And I have my entire engine live. I can just mill and mill and mill and mill, and I don't really care what you're doing on your side. You're just staring at me milling. I recently faced Kokorin, and Kokorin was just watching me like rip through my entire deck, and I just had everything that I needed in my drop zone, and he was just like, this is this is scary. And I'm like, yeah, it's just turn 1. Don't worry, it only gets worse from here. You know, so you can do some really spicy plays with this. The only way you can deny it is you yourself denying it if you run out of soul or whatever the case is, you know, or you don't see a couple copies. You can column bard into Bilber. That's actually one of the reasons why I upped my column bards in a lot of my decks, is literally just because it's my plan B. If my opponent just doesn't, if I don't see this in hand, then I'll just column bard for it, and boom, now it's in my hand and I can just do whatever I want to do. This card actually does work with the new Stride extremely well, actually. So the new Stride says you have to have 30k in drop to do the triple door skill, so you can have these out and Navigator and a couple other things, and you could just go ballistic if you want. Have this as some of your you know, soul recursion, and boom bam boom, you'll hit 30 soul really fast. On top of that, you'll have units on the board because the new Stride does not call anything, so you have to be very cautious with how you're boning. Bone is this card right here, how you're using bone and all that kind of stuff to kind of utilize this, so you gotta be careful. But if you have Navigator, if you have this card, you will probably go through your entire deck. Keep in mind, Navigator is not deniable and this card is not deniable either, so just you just keep resting, keep doing your thing. Your opponent really can't stop what you're doing until you start attacking, and even then, early on, they can't do much. They don't have G-guards, don't have anything. They really can't do too much to stop your combo. It's a grade 1. That's another thing why this card is amazing. This is a grade 2, wouldn't have nearly as much functionality as it does as a grade 1. It being a grade 1, which means the minute you ride, the minute you start your turn, the minute the minute your turn actually starts, your first turn, you can actually start utilizing this card right then and there. You don't have to, but that is the best time to start utilizing it. You want to start increasing your drop as fast as possible, see the pieces you need, do the ride targets that you need, go into your Beatrice and go for the kill as soon as possible. And this card utilizes that because it's a grade 1. And then more, it replaces itself. So another thing that's cool is that you don't really care about this card as a booster, as anything. You don't really need it. It's a 7k, by the way, so 7k is a big feels bad, but it's also really good against denying your opponent. If they're an 8k and you want to deny them, you can deny them with this exact card. So that's another thing. That's a good thing and a bad thing. You don't really want it as a booster, but hey, if you have to ride it, that's not bad either, because if you need to deny, you can. And another thing, like I said, it does replace itself, which is amazing. You're not ever actually losing value on this card, because the minute you call it, you'll be replacing it with another unit, so you're not minusing or doing much of anything. If anything, you're staying consistently on like the same balance scheme of like card economy, right? You're just replacing it with other cards, and then hopefully to get better cards, and then use those better cards to then keep your engine going to then win faster, right? So that's kind of what it does. But in other decks, for example, the new 7C stuff coming, you can call the gooey guy, the grade 3 guy is coming out that pretty much restands with 7Cs, and then you can also call Scaradix with this card too. So you can top 3 for Scaradix, you know, and just set up your Scaradix for your later turns. Another thing you can prepare for is you can prepare for superior riding. If you want superior ride and you need to see all your stuff in drop, this is another way to kind of get through your deck a little bit faster. I think that about covers it. I don't know if I have anything more. There's probably some small little plays. You need to bad bounty, you need to see Rose, cool. You have Rose, you have Night Storm in your drop, you have this in your drop, you have some bones in your drop, cool. You're solid, you're good to go. You just slam face, you do your thing, re-ride, go into Night Rose, swing with Night Rose, and you're doing this all on your first Stride, by the way, and you're just good. Now, I will say this is more of a high roll card. You're constantly looking at top 3, right? So sometimes it misses, or sometimes you don't see the stuff in the right order, but it's okay. That's why you have other fixers like this and Columbard, a couple other cards, or Greed Shade to kind of help you with that engine. And so that way you can't like 100% rely on just this card to help you get to your bad bounty win con a turn sooner, but you can use it as a fuel to get you there faster. I think that's all I have about Bilber. There might be some more hidden stuff between like other decks. I mainly use it in Beatrice because I sped up Beatrice. I use Beatrice as my defensive engine and Bilber as my offensive engine essentially, but there is definitely probably room for this card in other locations, and I'd be more than happy to hear if there's anyone out there that has been testing with this card in either other clans or in this clan or in other decks. I've seen some people have even been tagging me their list that they've been winning, by the way, with this exact card, rather they have it at 2 or 4, whatever the number is. I've seen a couple lists with 4, I've seen a couple lists with 2. I kind of seen it alternate because some people do still value Navigator. Perfectly understandable, because this is a 5k. A lot of people value Navigator because this is a 5k and they just don't want to run this because they prefer the 10k defenses to 10k offense, whatever it is. I totally understand that. The only reason I have this at pretty much max copies in my deck is because this goes on. This is live the minute my turn starts, similar to Bilber. The minute my turn starts, I can instantly start playing these into soul and drawing cards, and then using Bilber to soul boss and call new cards. So that's why I like running this card. Literally the downside is the fact that it's a 5k. I haven't tested everything in premium because I don't know everything in premium, but just off of the stuff that I am aware of, or with the stuff that the high level players have been telling me and we've been discussing in general, let me know your thoughts and all that stuff. Sorry if this was a huge rant. If you liked it, awesome. If you didn't like it, I'm sorry. I can't really do much about that. But other than that, guys, peace out. That's with that. I'll see you guys next time. And yeah, do not forget to shop at 50cards.shop. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Let's get the algorithm going. I'll see you guys in a future video. Bye!